This is what I've been worried about. Has to do with the Trump saying that he wants to abolish the income tax. Um, these are the words he floated around some months ago, and I was like, okay, I hope he's just saying that. It seemed like a fly by the seat of his pants sort of talk.
Hmm.
And I went back and I read a bunch of articles around the time of like things he said he would be doing, and in there was abolishing the income tax, and I sort of dismissed it all because it seemed crazy. Then he's doing all the other things on that list, and then
Makes you wonder.
he reiterated a few days ago the abolition of the income tax. Now, so that you know, my position is clear on that. I do think um, taxation in and of itself is inherently in the libertarian idea detrimental to the population if it's done in such a way where there's overspending inside of the government, and then the money's not being used wisely. So I could understand if a politician comes in and says, hey, money's not being spent properly at the government, we need to abolish the tax, put more money back into the hands of the people, and we'll have a more productive society.
Hmm.
I could totally understand that. What I don't hear from Trump or from anyone in his cabinet is this idea of the Triffin's dilemma, where the reason why there's trade deficits with the United States with other countries, and high taxation rates and this exodus of dollars from the United States out to the rest of the world, is that this is what happens with a reserve currency. When you have a reserve currency, a global reserve currency, you have the advantage of being able to print your own currency to be able to export dollars. You have, you could use sanctions with a currency. You have a bunch of advantages, but one of the disadvantages is that you must supply the world with dollars. Like you have to send those dollars out because the whole world is dependent on the access to those dollars in order to engage in commerce. And so if Trump, along with the tariffs and the and abolishing the income tax, um, both in rhetoric and in action, reduces the number of dollars that gets exported out, that is very deflationary for the rest of the world. Um, we're already going to be seeing that in Canada with the tariffs. He's putting 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, and he wants to eliminate the trade deficit with Canada. And it bothered me that he spoke to Justin Trudeau, who was prime minister at the time. He says, "Hey, why do we have this trade deficit?" And Trudeau's like, "I don't know. I don't know why we have this trade deficit." He should have said, "Oh, it's because you need to do this in order to be the world hegemon. Like this is part of the deal that you guys get to rule the entire, financial system of the planet, and that you have these trade deficits." And he didn't say that. So if this happens, if the income tax gets abolished, you need this onshoring of manufacturing and production back to the United States, and it could be very, very, very good for the United States, but terrible in the short term uh, for the rest of the nations.
It'll cause a lot of disruption. There's no question about it. That said, there's already roughly a $10 trillion opportunity in reshoring that has already begun. So it's not like manufacturers are waiting to consider moving to America and start production efforts here. That effort's already been underway since 2018 when Trump was first introducing different tariffs across the board. And both lumber and steel were impacted by the tariffs that existed during that period. So I think it's important to recognize that the reshoring effort has already begun. We're sort of starting that process already, and there actually have been, some industries that have started to crop up in response to that, which are beginning that process already. So while the correct response is to say, okay, we need to bring manufacturing here to the United States, the the way that we replace income tax is the part that I'm most interested in. I think Trump was referring to this as the external revenue service, where they would be tasked with collecting those tariffs and duties and revenues from other foreign sources. But I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if that's enough revenue to really cover the amount of spending we have. I think what I've always thought was a more logical solution was to switch to something that would be more like a flat tax or something like the Fair Tax Act, where we have implemented more of a sales tax approach to consumption, so that on the flip side, you've got this ability to decide whether or not you want to even spend money to, either retain more of your income or when you do spend, you have to spend a little bit more because that goes back to the revenue service. But in either event, or even if it's a coupling of the two and we implement some kind of sales tax, I don't know, I'm kind of for this idea. I mean, I'm not exactly a huge fan of income tax to begin with. Not only is it a laborious process, but I'd rather keep more of my income. Thank you very much.
Well, see, I'm all for that in practice. Like I get that, but the I guess the question I have for you is, especially as an American citizen, the idea here is that there's a certain level of suffering that the Americans have to take in order to finance the rest of the world. And would it be better for if you had a choice of no longer being the reserve currency of the world, having a high level production and basically like how America was before World War II, just a powerhouse production, satisfy all your needs. Would you prefer to have that, or would you prefer to have the world reserve currency where everyone's selling the Americans goods? Right, you're the target of all the goods because people want the dollars out. So you get less products if you're no longer the reserve currency, but more stability, I guess, locally, versus what it is now, which is instability but world hegemon.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been the reserve currency that has allowed us to have such a deep and sort of poor trade deficit for some time now, because production has mainly left the United States for decades now. I don't think it's a bad thing to see some of those reshoring efforts make it back to the United States, creates jobs and improves our economy, will overall increase our GDP and our overall exports, shore up some of that difference. Uh, I agree with you from the perspective that it will create volatility. It will create short-term suffering for people at the lower income levels, and it will impact many other countries around the world. So it's not exactly something that I can look at and say, well, this is the most rational way to continue that helps everyone at the same time. But I think this is the administration we have. So I guess we have to prepare ourselves for volatility. What is the trade out of this?
Yeah, so the trade here is well, I just wanted to play this quick video, just first explaining a little bit of Triffin's paradox, but the end is the most important part to me. And Triffin himself spoke about it, so I think
Sure.
you'll recognize the trade.
Step number 2, Triffin's paradox explained. The way this works is the country with the reserve currency has to run trade deficits. In other words, it has to export its currency outside of its domestic economy. If it doesn't do this, it slows global growth, potentially creating social instability. The paradox is if it does run large enough trade deficits, this can create instability in the currency itself. To understand this better, let's go right back to the internet.
This is a description of Triffin's dilemma, or Triffin's paradox, straight from the IMF. Testifying before the U.S. Congress in 1960, economist Robert Triffin exposed a fundamental problem in the international monetary system. If the United States stopped running balance of payments deficits, the international community would lose its largest source of additional reserves. The resulting shortage of liquidity could pull the world economy into a contractionary spiral, leading to instability. And this is the social instability I was referring to earlier. But if the U.S. deficits continued, a steady stream of dollars would continue to fuel the world economic growth. However, excess U.S. deficits, a dollar glut, would erode confidence in the value of the U.S. dollar. Without confidence in the dollar, it would no longer be accepted as the world's reserve currency. The fixed exchange rate system could break down, taking us right back to instability. And it can not only lead to instability, but it can also lead to foreigners owning a lot of U.S. assets, such as the gold that they started taking prior to 1971, and today, U.S. treasuries, real estate, and stocks. But it also hollows out the manufacturing base of the country that has the reserve currency status. More on that in just a moment. And as an interesting side note, Triffin's solution to his dilemma, or his paradox, was to create a whole new reserve currency, one that wasn't tied to any individual country. And this was basically the genesis, along with Bretton Woods, to the IMF, the World Bank, and the SDR we have.
All right.
So if only we had some kind of currency that, was a good store of value, that was accessible to the whole world, and, was created in a way that was even better in a digital format. Is that where we're going with this? Is that is that the play?
Right.
I think there's this thing called Bitcoin that might be worth pointing to.
That's exactly right. Here's the interesting part. The Triffin's paradox is you can't escape it. With the world reserve currency, you're going to get to the collapse of the financial system either way. Whether the nation proceeds to continue with creating the deficits, they'll eventually hollow out their country completely, or if they decide, no, we want to do like what Trump is doing right now, focus on domestic, well, then you will no longer get the reserve, you'll no longer have the reserve currency anymore. And so the world reserve currency ends either way. And if, imagine over the next 10 years or so, that did happen. It got to the end. Okay, now we have to rethink what the world reserve currency is, and they have to choose something. Well, they already tried BRICS, right? That didn't really take off. The only option that people would have now is Bitcoin or some sort of cryptocurrency. I'm even saying some sort of cryptocurrency. It has to be Bitcoin. They're going to choose Ethereum? No, they're going to choose Bitcoin. And so long Bitcoin seems to be like the play, which has always been what the Bitcoiners were saying, that the financial system was eventually going to collapse, and that an alternative would need to be chosen. So I think that's pretty interesting. And long Bitcoin. So long gold, long Bitcoin. These are all the prepper trades. Trump is
That's what I
giving us all the
mean.
prepper trades.
We're seeing safe haven flights right now, and that is worth pointing out. I had a conversation earlier today about the Schiller PE again. We just crossed 38 for the average price to earnings of the S&P 500. My favorite metric for keeping an eye on whether or not stocks are overextended. So I just feel like a lot of variables are starting to line up here in terms of potential sell-off for the stock market. And, obviously there will be flights to safe haven environments. Given the tariff concerns and the inflation concerns, where the Fed has remained paused on interest rates, you're already seeing a rise in long-term interest rates and yields as well. It just feels like the market's kind of looking for a place to store cash right now rather than investing in stocks.
That's right. When we actually take a look at what's going on with the dollar, like I'm looking at the dollar and I'm not seeing it actually choose a particular direction. We're seeing here, let me just pull it up.
Well, it's still looking pretty bullish, but you're right. There was a little bit of a sharp pullback there.
Well, it's that we mentioned before, the last time Trump came to office, what was it, 2016? We had this sharp fall on the dollar, which is what that's what I would want to see for liquidity to increase, for this dollar to fall to this level. But if the idea that Trump is putting on all these efforts that are inflationary, right? The deportations, the tariffs, these are all potentially inflationary, and that the dollar is still bullish. I'm not sure what to make of it. It seems pretty crazy. How does gold go up? Bitcoin go up, and the dollar go up in an inflationary environment? I'm not sure what to think. And this is setting the case for long-term rates being at 10%, 12%. Like, I don't see how we avoid that if these tariffs really come into play. I mean, I'm saying really come. He is putting on the tariffs, like it is happening. So I'm not sure what to make of it. If I don't see the dollar fall and the dollar keeps essentially crashing up, that's bad. The dollar going up through all of this is absolutely terrible. It means people are desperate for the dollar and they cannot have it. It's a shortage of dollars, and that will not be sustainable, and eventually will cause severe problems within financial markets. So that's not a good thing.
All right, keeping an eye on all of these for sure. There's no question there's uncertainty at this point.